Alright, so the leader we're going to be talking about in today's video is going to be Sabine Wren. She's been the final leader from the very first set that we haven't covered yet. She's going to be a aggression and heroism leader with a Mandalorian Rebel Inspector keyword trait. She's going to have an action. You can exhaust her to deal 1 damage to each base. And now this game Stars Unlimited, it works well in a 1v1 sort of standpoint, but it's also built to work in with multiple and more players. So no matter how many players are on the field, she's going to deal everybody, including the player who's using this leader, 1 point of burn damage. Which means games with playing with Sabine Wren are going to go extremely fast, and there's no way to get around it. If you control 4 more resources, you can deploy her as a leader. Now, 4 is super cheap, so her epic action to deploy herself as a leader unit is super cheap compared, or rather super early, because you don't have to spend resources, not cheap, but it's early compared to other leaders that go from usually 5 to 6, so some even have 7, and of course Palpatine has 8. So she's going to be a 2-5 when she finally does that with no other abilities other than on attack you deal 1 damage to each enemy base. To each enemy base. That's an important word that's added in there now, because when you put her into the field as a leader unit, she only deals damage to your enemy, where normally she's going to deal damage to everybody. So although her stats aren't that great, you get to put her out on turn 4. And technically, no, you get to put her out on turn 3, I believe, because you start with 2 resources. So you get to put her out turn 3, and she's going to be able to deal some damage to your opponent's base, if that's when you choose to deploy her as a leader unit. But the fact that you can put her out so early is going to mean that she's going to be able to move a lot more aggressive than every other deck, along with that ability even, that's going to allow her to, again, deal so much damage to your opponent's base at the course of your own base. For the first time in forever, I genuinely believe that you should probably go with the generic base here. Because you're dealing so much damage to your own base along with your opponent's base, you're probably going to want to look at having a little more HP on your own base. Now, if you're playing against an opponent with a special base with a special ability, now they're actually kind of put on a timer, sort of winning this interaction from the get-go, because at least every round, you're going to be reducing both you guys by 1, and you're starting off with 5 more than they are, which means usually going to win. But of course, if you ever feel like you need that extra 3 damage to a non-leader unit, go ahead and use Tarkentown. Looking at some units you can play with Sabine Wren, you can play the Jedi Agitator, and there are a lot of cool units with this leader. Keep that in mind. 2 cost, 2/1 Saboteur, so it's going to allow you to get past those Sentinels and those shields that are going to stop your whole game plan of just aggroing out your opponent. On attack, if you control a leader unit, which you'll be able to do, again, turn 3, deal 2 damage to a ground unit or a base. So usually on turn 3, you can play this dude, on turn 2, you can play this dude, or rather turn 1 or turn 2, you can play this dude down, and then on turn 3, then you can attack with him, if he's still alive, that is. You can attack with him, and just, because you can have your leader out at that point, and just deal 2 damage to your opponent's base by swinging it directly into the base, because he can ignore Citadel, and deal another 2 damage to the base, 4 damage to the base, and plus you'll have Sabine Wren on board. So, I mean, it's just, it writes itself. Freedom Fighter is going to be a cool card. 3 costs, 3/4 Saboteur. When you play another red aggression card, you may deal 1 damage to a base. That's usually going to be your opponent's base. You can play the Gorilla Attack Pod, 6 costs, 4/6. Now, this is obviously a lot more expensive, and so you won't really be able to get access to this card until later game. Until, again, you're total daily damage to yourself and your opponent. You never really can be too sure how long these games are going to go, especially when playing with Sabine. But it's going to have grit, and it's going to have this nice ability that when you play and you have 50, and your base has 15 or more damage on it, then you get to ready the unit the second you play it. So it's essentially going to gain a better version of ambush. And this is going to be really important because it's going to allow you to put it down. And because, again, you're dealing damage to your own base. So you're going to have some damage on your base regardless. By turn 6, you're going to have probably 15 or more damage on your base. And you get this unit down, and you can attack with it the turn it's played. Absolutely amazing. You can look at a card like Zelbarelius, 5 cost, 5/5. When a unit completes an attack, if the defender was defeated, deal 4 damage to a ground unit. Just a generically good card for some extra aggro. Red 3 is going to be a 3 cost, 2/3, raid 1, and then also each friendly heroism unit gets raid 1. So again, just a good aggro card for the red heroism sort of game plan there. And then, of course, you're going to have Bombing Run, which is not exactly the most amazing card, but it's going to be a 5 cost. It's going to deal 3 damage to each. You're going to choose your arena, gray, ground, or space. You deal 3 damage to each unit in that arena. So it's going to allow you to do a lot of damage to your opponent's units if they have a lot of units on board. And, of course, you do have to take damage yourself, but sometimes it could not matter. Rallying Cry, if you're playing double aggression, 3 cost. Each friendly unit is going to gain raid 2 for this phase. And if you have a lot of units on board, this can mean a lot of damage on your opponent. And then finally, we're going to talk about the Infiltrator skill. 1 cost, +1/+1, and the attachment is going to gain Saboteur. It's going to now ignore those shields and ignore those Sentinel abilities that are going to try to stop you from aggroing out your opponent. And that's going to be all the cool aggression cards we're going to be talking about, but there's a lot more things to talk about in this video. So next up is going to be Command. Command is one of the coolest ways to play Sabine because of how much ambush it has going for it. You can take a look at the bases. Again, I very much prefer the generic base here just to get that extra HP, but it's a very strong a very strong argument can be made for the energy conversion lab. Even though you lose that extra HP, the ability is so powerful, especially in Sabine Wren. Play a unit that costs 6 or less from your hand and give an ambush this phase. It's going to mean a lot of aggression for you and aggro for you throughout the game. Rather, you only can use it once, but it's going to allow you to give that extra push whenever you need it. Admiral Akbar is going to be a 3-cost unit, 1/4, restore 1. When you play him, you can deal damage to a unit equal to the number of units you control. If you have a lot of units on board, obviously that can be a lot of damage. Sometimes it's just going to be a little bit of damage, but then you allow you to do a little burn damage. But also can have that restore 1 ability that's going to allow you to keep your base alive for a little bit longer, being the fact that, again, you are dealing damage to your own base. Wedge is going to be a 5-cost 5/5. Each friendly vehicle unit gets +1/+1 and ambush. Ambush means that when you play that unit, you may ready and attack with it. You may ready it and attack it into an enemy unit. Obviously, you can't attack their base with it, so it's not going to bring you closer to winning the game on that front. But controlling your opponent's board by knocking out their characters is getting you closer to winning the game. Rogue Squadron Skirmisher, 6-cost 4/6 ambush, and also when you play him, you can return a unit that costs 2 or less from your discard pile to your hand to allow you to get some of those cool pieces back. Mercenary Company is going to be a 6-cost 5/5. They have ambush and overwhelm. And overwhelm means when you deal damage to an enemy unit, you can deal the extra damage to your opponent's base. So if you put him in there and your opponent has a pesky sentinel on board that has only a little bit of health left, you can not only knock out that sentinel, but you also deal damage straight to your opponent's base afterwards. You can go ahead and play the frontline shuttle to cost 1/3. Action, defeat this unit, and you can attack with a unit, even if it's exhausted, and it can attack bases for this attack. But again, controlling your opponent's board is a very important aspect to making sure you win the game, because just hoping you can out-aggro your opponent on base damage alone doesn't always work out for you. And then finally, as an event, you can play the 7-cost U-Wing Reinforcement. It's going to allow you to search your deck for top 10 cards of your deck for up to 3 units with a combined cost of 7 or less and play each of them for free. It's going to essentially say that if you ever get to this point in the game, turn 7 or higher, then you're going to be able to refill up your board with some units. If at that point you're going to have low units on the field, which you probably will if you are using you're attacking a lot with them into other people's units, right? For vigilance here, for the third aspect we're talking about in today's video, which is going to be vigilance. Obviously, you can go for the security complex. Again, I think the base, more so than ever, the generic base is a good option here, so you can have a little extra health on yourself for your character. Baze is going to be a really cool card here. 4 cost to 5 grit, and while you have the initiative, he's going to gain Sentinel. It's going to allow you to stay alive for a little bit longer by putting this defensive character on the field. Similarly, on the grit aspect anyway, Rugged Survivor is going to be cool. 5 cost, 3/5 grit. And then also on attack, if you control the leader unit, you can draw a card. Again, you can put your leader out as a unit when you're playing Sabine Wren on turn 3. Obviously, this is a turn 4 card, but at the same time, if you do decide to drop Sabine turn 4, you can drop this guy as well, and then the next turn even, he's going to be able to get you some extra card draw. And he's going to be alive for a little bit longer than a lot of other characters or units. The Ghost is actually a really good option here. 6 cost, 5/5, shielded, but also when you play him and when you attack, you can give a shield token for another Spectre unit. And Sabine Wren is a Spectre, so obviously she's really frail when you put her out, and she can die pretty easily. But waiting to drop the Ghost and Sabine means that you can actually keep Sabine alive for a lot longer, especially if you time it perfectly. And then, of course, you can play Make an Opening, 3 cost, give a unit -2/-2 this phase, and then also you can hail 2 damage from your base. A lot of time, you're going to have your base going to be taking damage from your own ability, so that being able to hail is really important. Also, -2/-2 is going to make your opponents a lot weaker, so they A, cannot deal that much damage to your base, and then B, can be a lot weaker for you to take out on the offensive. And then finally, we're going to talk about Takedown. 4 cost, defeat a unit with 5 or less remaining HP. A lot of times, you're going to have problematic units on the board that is going to stop you from out-aggroing them, and having an option that says, okay, just get rid of that unit is really important. Obviously, I want to point out here that Vanquish does the similar thing, and it's going to give you the similar desired outcome. But obviously, Takedown's a lot cheaper. Well, not a lot cheaper, but it is cheaper. And then finally, we want to talk about Cunning here. Your options for bases are as they always are. Data City is a great card as usual, but if you think you're going to need extra health, which you might actually need, then you can go for the generic base as well. Chopper's going to be a card here, 1 cost, 1/3, and while you control another Spectre unit, it's going to gain Raid. Of course, Sabine's a Spectre. On attack, you can discard a card from the defending player's deck. If it's an event, exhaust the resource that player controls. There's going to be a little bit of disruption there, but of course, it's not always guaranteed. Ezra Bridger, 3 cost, 3/4. When he completes an attack, you may look at the top card of your deck, and you may play it, discard it, or leave it at the top of your deck. Generically good ability. It's going to allow you to get some information, and at best, it's going to allow you to extend your hand out by a card. Rogue Operative, 3 cost, 2/4. Saboteur, really important for getting past those Sealed Sentinel abilities and those shields that are going to stop you from aggroing. And also is going to gain Raid 2. Is going to have Raid 2. And then you can also look at the Liberated Gunship, 4 cost, 3/4. Ambush, Aggressive Peace. You can take a look at a card like Spark of the Rebellion, 2 cost. Look at the opponent's hand and discard a card from it. It's going to allow you to look at your opponent's hand, see the pieces they have, and say, well, okay, you're going to try to control my board with this card. This card's not really good for me to see this phase. I can't really deal with this card right now. I'm going to discard the worst card for me, or the best card for you, depending on how you look at it. Surprise Strike is going to be 2 cost. Attack with the unit, you can get +3 for the attack. Not exactly the most amazing card ever, but it is going to add a little bit more aggro to the game. So at face value, it synergizes with Sabine. Snapshot Reflex is similarly 1 cost, 1 +1/+1. Then also, when it's played, you can attack with the attached unit. A lot of times you can use this to surprise your opponent with a Hya type move. You sort of attach this to one of your more aggressive units and swing in with them in one action with a slightly bigger attack. And of course, throughout the later turns, it's going to make up for itself there with a +1/+1. Okay, and then finally, we're going to talk about just a couple heroes and unit cards that work well with Sabine. There are actually a ton if you're playing a massive Rebel deck, which you can do and get take advantage of all these cards that help Rebels. General Dodana, 4 cost, 4/4. Other friendly Rebels are going to get +1/+1. You can also go for Snowspeeder, 5 cost, 3/6. Ambush, and then also when on attack, exhaust an enemy vehicle ground unit. And then finally, you can take a look at a card like the Fleet Lieutenant, 3 cost, 3/3. When you play him, you can attack with another unit. And if it's a Rebel unit, it gets +2 attack for this attack. So it's going to give you some extra actions and a little bit of extra aggro for your troubles there. And that's going to be it for today's video. I didn't want to dwell too much on a lot of different cards that Sabine can run because of the sheer vast amount of them that she can use. Because of her ability is so absolutely straightforward, you're just trying to aggro out your opponent. You're trying to be better at them at dealing damage. And any card that helps you do that is going to be synergistic with Sabine in some way. It's why she's one of the best leaders currently in the game. It's why a lot of people rank her at the very tippity top of all leaders because of that simple fact. A lot of different cards work well with her. Your goal is just to kill your opponent faster than kill you, and anything that helps in that endeavor in the long term is going to be a card that works pretty well with the character. But that being said, there's a ton of other cards that work well with the character, and I really do want to see what you guys personally really like with this leader. Drop in the comment section below. If you haven't already, go watch all the other, or at least whatever ones interest you, leader spotlights. The game is going to be dropping in the next couple days, and so Star Wars Unlimited is about to drop. This is the last leader spotlight. Let's take a look at the cards when they finally get here. Well, that's going to be all for now, but if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys go ahead and watch some of our other videos that we've made on this channel. Also, give this video a like if you thoroughly enjoyed it. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future content. And I hope to see you guys back at the Roost.